At the end of World War II, England, the United States, France, and the Soviet Union split the defeated Germany into two parts. England, United States, and France all controlled West Germany, while the Soviet Union took the East.
Many people in East Germany were not happy and very dissatisfied with the living conditions and the political system in East Germany. The total control, censorship, people were not allowed to travel, people were not allowed to read and watch the films they wanted to watch. Everything was controlled, strict censorship. So many people didn't like that, and they envied West Germans. Well, it led to eventual collapse and disappearance of East Germany.
On August 12, 1961, after 2.5 million unhappy Germans fled to the west, East Germany and the Soviet Union erected the Berlin Wall in hopes of keeping East Berliners and East Germans from fleeing to non-communist West Berlin. The East Germans were now trapped on the east side.
Oh, there were many differences. On the economical side, East Germany was very poor. The people didn't get all that good stuff we got in the West Germany, such as bananas or oranges or real good coffee. They had something which is called in German Muckefuck. Also, the difference was that the West Germans, they could travel everywhere they want, all over the world. And in East Germany, they only could travel within the so-called Eastern Bloc.
The wall stood for almost 30 years. In the late 80s, Moscow had to allow Hungary and Czechoslovakia to open their borders due to months of refugee crises. All of Eastern Europe was a mess in 1987, when U.S. President at the time, Ronald Reagan, made a speech at Brandenburg Gate. He addressed Mikhail Gorbachev, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union.
If you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate! Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate!
The job of General Secretary gave Gorbachev a lot of power in the Soviet Union, as East Germany still claimed to have a communist government. Gorbachev was a firm believer in Glasnost, the openness policy. He was open to unification of Germany and knew that sooner or later the wall would have to come down. In October 1989, Gorbachev was invited to East Berlin for a national holiday. He arrived and was welcomed with people of all ages, sporting torches and shouting slogans in German. Gorbachev knew enough German language to understand that they were saying that they wanted to unify Germany.
Well, east part of Berlin was very different. Many houses still had bullet marks from the World War II, and they were kind of run down. The people didn't look as happy, and they were dressed not as nicely as in the West Berlin. There were not too many cafes, hardly any cafes and good restaurants, and the shops were miserable. The East Berliner seems to be a lot more reserved and kind of gloomy, not as happy.
What Gorbachev saw in East Germany was one of the many protests that took place in the fall of 1989. East Germans were finding ways to get to West Germany through the open gates to Hungary and Czechoslovakia. The Krenz government was going to allow East Germans to finally pass through the wall on November 17, 1989. But upon hearing this announced at a press conference on November 9th, East Germans swarmed the wall and the guards eventually yielded, letting people through having been given little or no information.
Yeah, it was a kind of mistake. As a matter of fact, so I was told that an official of the East German government, he was interviewed in a TV, and somehow it slipped him that the borders are now open, which was not the case, and so the people all went to the borders, especially in Berlin, to the wall, and demanded that the wall came down. So that was something which was already, if you want to say, in the air that something like this will happen. But this was the last thing. That was on the evening. I think it was October 3rd, the evening that they went to the wall and demanded that it comes down, because everybody thought the borders are open now.
On November 9th, 1989, the demolition of the Berlin Wall commenced, although it was not torn down immediately. What mainly helped to tear down the wall was when people chipped off parts of it for souvenirs. The term for these wall woodpeckers were Mauerpetcht. Eventually, the new border crossings were added to very little amount that was already there. Starting on December 23rd, West Germans and West Berliners were allowed to travel visa-free through the border crossings, and shockingly, after a while, East Germans could actually travel more freely than Westerners. In the first few months, the East German military even tried to fix some of the damages done by the Mauerpetsch, but these attempts gradually stopped, and only remains in pieces of the famous Berlin Wall were left as memorials. The fall of the wall was officially concluded on October 3rd, 1990, and was the first step toward German unification.
Oh, I was totally thrilled, and I was very surprised that it happened so quickly, because I was there 2 years before it happened, and it seemed to me that that wall would be there forever.
But was Gorbachev really important in the fall of the Berlin Wall? We believe he was a key leader in the fall of the wall, although some people argue that the people of Berlin, not the leaders, were the cause for the destruction of the wall. In the fall of 1989, the people's protests became more frequent, and the leaders of Berlin had little control over the situation. The gates were opened a week early due to the people of Berlin swarming the wall and overwhelming the guards. On the night the Berlin Wall was torn down, Gorbachev was not even awakened from his sleep. He hadn't sent any troops to stop it. He said it might have caused a third world war if he had, and he had faith in the decision for the wall to come down. He said that he knew that sooner or later it was going to have to come down. He knew the Soviet Union would not be able to control East Berlin as well, once the two sides had merged, but to him, the well-being of the people was more important than government control.
I think Gorbachev was a key factor. He made it possible with his perestroika that in Glasnost, that the situation evolved so that the wall finally was teared down. I'm 100% sure. He was understanding that the suppression of people could neither work in USSR nor in other Eastern Bloc countries. And as a matter of fact, as usual, the German, they were the most perfect in that, in suppressing their people also. No? So Germany was one of the last countries which opened their borders. No?
Communist Party Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev was a real key leader, and it is most likely was his decision to let the wall to come down. Amazingly, he probably didn't have to do much at all. The fact he wasn't doing anything, that was enough for the wall to collapse.
By not taking action against the fall, Gorbachev helped the GDR, or German Democratic Republic, become what it is today. The wall had fallen, and the people of East Germany were finally free.
No thought control. No dark sarcasm.